Namaskar, Nilesh Oak here with another session. This time, we will discuss Margashirsha in Mahabharata. The nakshatra name is Margashirsha, and if the full moon occurs near nakshatra Margashirsha, that lunar month can be designated as the month of Margashirsha. So that's the difference. Now, what is the context of this particular episode? It began just a few days ago with great Sanskritist Dr. Suresh Pantji writing a tweet. The tweet is in Hindi. Ek जिज्ञासा, he writes, पर विद्यमान भारत विंडो से क्या कभी वर्ष का प्रारंभ अश्विन या मार्गशीर्ष से होता था? बैठे ठाले ही सोचा, अश्विनी पहला नक्षत्र है तो अश्विन पहला मास क्यों नहीं? चित्रा से प्रारंभ क्यों? मार्गशीर्ष को श्री कृष्ण ने मासानाम मार्गशीर्षोम कहा है तो कोई बात तो होगी. Briefly, for those who don't understand Hindi, Sureshji felt curiosity on the occasion of the beginning of a Navaratra that begins with Ashwin Pratipada. And he wondered if ever the year, Samvatsar, began with Ashwin or Margashirsha. And why did he think like this? Because if Ashwini is considered the first nakshatra, which is the case in our current times as far as the Indian calendar is concerned, so then he wondered, why not Ashwin, the first month of the year? Why do we begin from the lunar month of Chaitra? And then he says, well, in Mahabharata, and specifically in Bhagavad Gita, which is part of Mahabharata, in the Vibhuti Yoga, Krishna refers to Masanam Margashirshoyam, as in, among the months, I am Margashirsha. And he's saying there must be some reason why Krishna is saying Masanam Margashirshoyam, Margashirshoam, okay? And then he is saying another reference, which is well known, at least to the serious students of Indian astronomy, that मार्गशीर्ष का दूसरा नाम अगहन अग्रहायण भी संकेत करता है कि यह अग्रहायण वर्ष का पहला महीना था. समाधान के लिए विद्वानों विदुषियन से विशेष निवेदन. Margashirsha has a name. Those of you who are interested, of course, you can explore on your own with your own research. But if you want a jump start, you may begin with Orion, as well as Arctic Home in the Vedas, these two books by great Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak. You may begin with these two books and you will see a significant detailed discussion on Margashirsha, Agrahayan, and so on. And then he lists many individuals that came to his mind, and that includes yours truly, but also many other names. Some of them you would recognize. For example, architect Rupa, that's Rupa Bhattiji. Let me see other names that I recognize. Sampadananda Mishraji, okay. Atma Pradnyanandaji, Dr. Vivek Debroy, and then myself. Now, Dr. Suresh Pantaji posted here in the Twitter, but he also posted on Facebook. I also tend to do that as much as possible, or my team members also tend to do this, both on Facebook and also on Twitter. So when Dr. Sureshji posted it on the Facebook, My other good friend, Professor Rajendra Gupta ji, he tagged me there on uh, Dr. Suresh ji's post. So that's what you see at the top. And I responded to Professor Rajendra Gupta ji saying, indeed, Margashirsha was the first month of the year during the Mahabharata times. It occurred, that is to say, coincided with the first month of Sharad season. And today, if you look at it, the location of the Margashirsha month, we see a shift of about 4 months with respect to the seasons. Specifically, so or that is to say, Margashirsha today coincides with the second month of Hemant season. So think of this around the December time period. It takes about 2000 years for a shift of 1 month with respect to season, and thus Mahabharata occurred about 4 times 2000, that's approximately 8000 years ago, or to be precise, 5561 BCE. Because keep that in mind, at the time of Mahabharata war, Margashirsha coincided with the first month of Sharad season. It is a necessary condition based on the Mahabharata evidence that the month of Margashirsha, when actually the Mahabharata war occurred, coincides with the first part of Sharad season, because that is the only way 100 plus different descriptions, astronomy, but also chronology, specifically related to the war and also related to Bhishma on the bed of arrows on Sharashaya, but also Bhishma Nirvana, can be satisfied. So these are the necessary requirements, necessities here. Besides Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata text actually unambiguously, you can say, refers to Margashirsha as the first month twice in Anushasan Parva. In Anushasan Parva, Adhyay 106 and 109. Now, many others responded to Dr. Sureshji's tweet in the Twitter world. Okay. For example, my good friend and a co-researcher, Rupa Bhattiji, she responded in multiple tweets. I will not go through them. I would encourage all of you to pause this video and read them. Interestingly, if you read it and you don't understand it, don't be surprised. And that's not because of has anything to do with how Rupaji writes. In fact, many times when I'm discussing with Rupaji, she will say, well, maybe people don't understand because I don't write it clearly. And well, there may be some element of truth. That's true for all of us. But I'm convinced that the reason many times most people don't understand, because she truly researches at a very deep level. In fact, people don't understand my work. And I'm not talking ordinary Mahabharata enthusiast, ordinary Hindu enthusiast. No. Academics literally sweat and digress, but they don't understand. Sanskritists don't understand. And I'm talking of my work is like elementary or maybe middle school, maybe high school, maybe graduate level work. Some of the stuff that Rupa Bhattiji does is PhD stuff, or actually postdoc stuff. And when I refer to PhD or postdoc, I'm not referring to the modern day university PhDs, whether in India or in North America. Okay. These are cranked dime a dozen. I'm talking truly in the sense of what PhD or DSc, doctorate in science could be considered possibly 50 years ago. Okay. And that too, very selected places. Never mind. Now, this was a wonderful response chain that Rupaji did. And fortunately, and not surprisingly though, Dr. Sureshji understood it, and he responded to Rupaji saying, Rupaji, as I said, chamatkrit hota hu, never ever occurred that Shashi rabbit could in fact be Mrugashira. And this is only one of the very key, neat, beautiful point elaborated by Rupaji. Again, it was Rupaji who brought it to my attention the very first time. In fact, in her response, this last response where she has quoted a link to my blog article from my blog site, Discovery of Srimati Rupa Bhattiji, is this is what is referring to that making a sense of Nakshatrana Maham Shashi. There is another Vibhuti description in the Vibhuti Yoga of Bhagavad Gita, besides Masanam Margashirshoyam. And then Sureshji continues, he says, Sri Nileshok, the learned one, has rightly said, connecting the dots. That is what science is all about, and that is precisely where you as in Rupaji, excel. Thanks again. As I said, many others that Sureshji had copied also responded, but just to keep the limits of time in mind, I will not go into them. People who are on Twitter can go there and actually read the responses. You will find them useful and educational. But let's move on. After this discussion, both in the Facebook world as well as Twitter world, many ask me, well, okay, so could you please elaborate for us what exactly is this discussion going on? So they were happy that this was an exciting discussion going on between many learned folks, but not everyone could grasp it. And that's understandable. So in the Bhagavad Gita, which is part of Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters, and the 10th chapter goes by the name Vibhuti Yoga. Okay. And in that Vibhuti Yoga, Krishna is describing as we see things in this Srishti, especially the grand things, because those are easy to understand and quickly we can identify with that Paramatma. And then the smaller things also we may able to relate. So this great things he's mentioning as vibhutis of this Paramatma Tattva. And in that list, remember, Krishna is telling Bhagavad Gita at the time of Mahabharata war. And when we use either a upaman or a vibhuti, we have to use something that is familiar to the people of that time. And familiar in a broader sense, because it's meant to be for the benefit of the masses. Okay, so he gives a long list of vibhutis, and then at the end he says, well, there are actually infinite of them. There is no end to these vibhutis, so I have just mentioned few prominent ones. In that list, okay, in the sense of timing, okay, in the sense of a timestamp, you can say, or in the sense of calendrical sense, some of the vibhutis that Krishna mentions are here. There may be many more, but because it's relevant, whatever is relevant, I have pulled it here. So I have pulled two shlok. The first one, again, both from the 10th chapter, Vibhuti Yoga, 21 and then 35. Adityana Maham Vishnur, Jyotisham Ravi Anshuman, Marichir Marutamasmi, Nakshatrana Maham Shashi. Please focus on the areas that I have underlined. Okay, if you want to explore other stuff that is not underlined, please be my guest. Do it yourself. In the second shlok, the second line is critical for our discussion. Masanam Margashirshoham Rutunam Kusuma. And the mild confusion that Sureshji expressed is actually, again, not unusual. You will find that is the confusion that definitely occurred. We have an indirect evidence of it after Mahabharata and contemporary to Mahabharata times. To the extent, post-Mahabharata ancient Indian narratives try to add their notes so that people understand this Vibhuti Yoga of Bhagavad Gita or this specific shlok correctly. But that's for another time. So let's look at what is the significance of this. Adityana Maham Vishnu. There are Adityas. Now, where does the word Aditya comes from? Okay, let's look at the right one instead of me again chit-chatting with you here. Understanding Vishnu among Adityas. He says Adityana Maham Vishnu. Okay, what do we know? There could be a lot more information out there in ancient Indian narratives, but I am trying to bring just a few points so that we can connect the dots. For example, and this does not have to be the only explanation, but this is indeed a legitimate explanation based on existing ancient Indian narratives. Okay, so for example, Chandogya Upanishad states Vishnu as the name of Adityas with Aditi, that is Nakshatra Devata of Punarvasu. Now, whether Chandogya Upanishad says it or not is not even relevant point. I'm mentioning it because some foolish person will just get stuck there. Actually, Punarvasu as a nakshatra and Aditi as a nakshatra devata of a Punarvasu can be found in multiple texts. Okay, so don't get stuck on the Chandogya Upanishad and which specific shlok and so on. Okay, so Vishnu as the name of Vishnu as a son of Aditi, like Aditi is the mother of Devas. Okay, and Diti is the mother of Danavas. Think of that story. If this is not familiar to you, uh, read, do your tapasya, homework, whatever it takes to become familiar before you start understanding this. So Aditi is a mother of Devas, and so Vishnu is considered as son of Aditi. Aditi is a nakshatra devata of Punarvasu, so keep that in mind. Okay, so when Adityas are referred to, has some connection with a Punarvasu as a starting point, but Aditya also, many of you would remember, related to the sun. Okay, so the 12 suns of the year, Samvatsar. Okay, and each sun has a name. Now, this also causes confusion because Adityas, if you go to our ancient Indian narratives, say, for example, the Rigveda, in one place, Adityas are described as only 7 in number, another place 8 in number, another place 10 in number, some other place 12 in number. Okay, the sequence of those Adityas, the names of these Adityas, they also have some variations, and that can cause confusion. And therefore, I said, there can be multiple interpretations, but just for simplicity, remember, we do know that Aditi is a mother of Vishnu given in Chandogya Upanishad. Aditi is a nakshatra devata of Punarvasu. Okay, so this is very important thing to remember because that has a relevance to understanding these vibhutis and its connection with the timing of Mahabharata. Now, many people will say, Nilesh, no matter what you discuss, you always come back to timing. You are right. Because without the context of time, you cannot even understand Bhagavad Gita. You cannot understand Mahabharata. You cannot understand the internal references of Ramayana, internal references of Bhagavad Gita. Why is that? Because that is the foundation for understanding the meaning. Desha, Kala, Patra. Okay, the place, or you can think of this as a space. Kala is the time, okay, the eternal time, but also the parametric time, and the patra, which is the context. That time, parametric time, how do we get it? Through astronomy. In Indian context and therefore world context, astronomy is a time. And that's how the ongoing things, the nitya things, they always exist. The year comes and the new year begins. The Margashirsha, the lunar month of Margashirsha comes every year. The seasons, Rutunam Kusumakara, they come every year. Moon goes through the nakshatras every month. Sun goes through all the nakshatras every year. These all nitya motions are made use of to create the nimitta to timestamp specific historical events. Let's go to point 2. Vishnu Puran lists, for example, Vishnu as the first of 12 Adityas. And Adityas are the names of the solar months. Just like I said, in Rigveda, you may find only 7 Adityas or 8 Adityas. In some other places, 10 Adityas. In Vishnu Puran, Vishnu is listed as the first of Adityas. Just keep that in mind. And Adityas are the names of solar months. Now, remember, usually when Krishna is giving these vibhutis, they are selected for a specific reason, like they are magnanimous in certain sense. So among the Adityas, why only Vishnu? And I'm trying to give you a rationale, a justification for that through these first 2 bullet points. Okay, so that Vishnu does come in the list of Adityas, 12 Adityas as the first one, at least in Vishnu Puran. Let's move on to the 3 one. That has to do now with the Nakshatrana Maham Shashi. Now, many translators, many majority, 90+% of all the commentators and translators have translated Shashi to mean the moon. Or of course it means moon, but it literally in the sense of among the nakshatras, I am the moon. Now, as far as I am concerned, the different interpretation, frankly, more meaningful, but in my humble opinion, the most accurate description came from Rupa Bhattiji. That is that Nakshatrana Maham Shashim, and that is what that blog I wrote. So here, the nakshatra, when it's referred to as a nakshatrana among the nakshatra, and then some name is given, and in this case Shashi, it is referring to the nakshatra devata. And Mahabharata text has sufficient evidence for what I'm just saying here, what I just asserted. Okay, that's for another time. And if you do have that doubt, please write that in your comment, and I may create another episode on this. So anytime a nakshatra is mentioned instead of the nakshatra name itself, and then somebody else is mentioned, such as Shashi or Bhaga or Prajapati or Indra, it's referring to the nakshatra devata. That is my assertion, and Mahabharata has sufficient evidence to prove that. So that related to that nakshatrana Maham Shashi is bullet number 3 here. Shashi Soma is the nakshatra devata of Margashirsha. Just like Aditi is a nakshatra devata of Punarvasu, and the connection with the Vishnu. Just keep that in mind. Let's go to bullet number 4. As I stated already, the Mahabharata text Anushasan Parva does have 2 instances, Adhyay 106, Adhyay 109, where Margashirsha is described as the first lunar month of the year. And the last one now. So Masanam Margashirsha, why Margashirsha among the months is to be considered as Krishna's Vibhuti, Parabrahma's Vibhuti? Because it is the first month during the Mahabharata times. Okay, why it was the first month? Well, we'll see that in a second. I already explained it, that Margashirsha or Margashirsha coincided or occurred during the first part of Sharad season. So the lunar calendar began with the Sharad season. Keep that in mind. Now, next one, Rutunam Kusumakara. Now, this has caused confusion too, especially because both Masanam Margashirshayam is there in the Vibhuti Yoga, but also Rutunam Kusumakara. Okay. Now, what is the Rutu of flowers? Season of flowers. Now, there are some people, I don't know why, maybe they never had a chance with nature, interacting with nature. Maybe they just grew up in big cities, concrete jungles, and no connection with the true nature. I don't know. The reasons could be many. But literally, or maybe just pedantic, they will say, oh, season of flowers is Vasanta. If Vasanta is stated, of course, Vasanta, but season of flowers is actually Vasanta and Sharad. And of course, depending on the geographical location and whether these things can even actually change, around the world. But as far as the India is concerned, it's Vasanta and Sharad. And I can tell you from my first-hand experience growing up very close to the nature for 15 plus years of my life when I started. Vasanta Rutu, but also Sharad Rutu. Sharad Rutu, more so, at least at a place where I grew up. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now we'll try to bring this together for these 2 shlok, but also for the timing. Before we jump into that, so now think of it. What did we hear here? We talked about Margashirsha, we talked about the Shashi, but also, if you remember Dr. Pantaji's comment, like Shashi as in rabbit, then remember that also. Punarvasu Nakshatra, okay, and Margashirsha. So in the sky, if you look at it, think of this Margashirsha area is between the Taurus sign, that is Rohini area, like, okay, so, or the, what do we call, Vrishab Rashi and Mithun Rashi. So Mesh, Vrishab, Mithun. So Vrishab Mithun. Just between that, if you think of it, and in that sense shared by, say, Taurus, but also Gemini, is this Mrugashirsha Nakshatra, in the Western astronomy known as Orion. Okay. All right. Now, at the bottom of this, and actually part of Orion in a way, but in the Western astronomy, consider a separate one, is this Lepus, the rabbit. Okay, now you may just look at this and says, where do I see the rabbit, or where do I see the Orion? Okay, with an arrow and a sword and so on and so forth. Or where do I see Nataraja? Those of you who know the identification of Mrugashirsha with Nataraja, with a Shiva, or identification of Ardra, which is this star here, Betelgeuse, with Rudra. Okay, for that, I'm going to, again, I'm using these diagrams from Rupa Bhattiji's presentation. And what she has done beautifully is superimposed our dancing Nataraja right at this Mrugashirsha Ardra area. Now you may able to see this apasmar, okay, which is this lepus. Okay, you can also imagine as apasmar, also as a rabbit here. Okay, and this is our Nataraja, by the way. And let me see. Okay, yeah, so this is that apasmar. Okay, and Nataraja is keeping his foot on top of this apasmar. Okay, which means what? Vismaran, in a way. Okay, and there are many other meanings to it. And in the Western astronomy, now go figure, okay, this Indian Shasha has gone to Western astronomy. Now why you will, hopefully, at least some of you, at least the intelligent ones, will understand the importance of a timestamp. Now, if you understand the timestamps for the Shasha, for example, at the Mahabharata times, but before Mahabharata times, but Mahabharata times, that 6 millennium BCE, and now you start looking at the Western astronomy and their development, which is way late in comparison to the Mahabharata times of 6 millennium BC. Now you start understanding not only the context, but who gave astronomy to who. This should be a goosebump moment for those of you who understood the connection. If not, let's move on. All right. If you go to Mahabharata text, now see, we are still talking Mahabharata. Now, away from Bhagavad Gita, if you get into the Shanti Parva and then Anushasan Parva, and specifically look at the, just like Vishnu Sahasranam, but also Shiva Sahasranam, see, these are specific shlok, specific names of Shiva, Rudra, from Shiva Sahasranam that Rupaji has pulled. Rudranamapi yo Rudra, Prabha Prabhavatamapi, or Adra Nakshatra. Remember, its Nakshatra Devata is Rudra. Then Shiva is called Nakshatra Sadhaka. Some people wonder, okay, so I know those stars, but what is Nataraja doing there? Okay, he's the chaser of nakshatras there. Mrugayati, the chaser, that's a Mrugashirsha Nakshatra. As I said, if you have no background whatsoever, okay, in astronomy, in modern astronomy, in Indian astronomy, and I'm not talking some elementary 101, guys, you will feel overwhelmed, and rightfully so. And that's why I tell Rupaji, I mean, people are going to be perplexed, because many simply do not understand that they have to study something for a very long time. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we have sutras, the person has to study nitya, like daily, but also for a dirgha kalena, for a very long time before somebody starts understanding these things. Okay, so let's move on. Those of you who did understand, great. If not, and if you are serious, then commit yourself to the study. But let's move on, okay? Now let's make connection of those Vibhuti Yoga, or from the Vibhuti Yoga chapter shlok, with what we are seeing at the time of Mahabharata, namely 5561 BC, the year of Mahabharata war. Quickly, I will not take a long time, but Earth at the center, we are watching all the stars and all the celestial bodies moving around the earth with the help of this reference nakshatra system of 27, 28 nakshatra. We will talk about 28 nakshatra in some other time, but for now, let's say 27 nakshatra. Notice the position of the vernal equinox. Okay, it is near Mrugashirsha, Ardra, Punarvasu. Please keep that in mind. Okay, Mrugashirsha, Ardra, Punarvasu, Pushya. Think of it like this. Okay, the vernal equinox. Exactly opposite is the autumnal equinox, and then at 90 degree, the summer solstice and winter solstice. Okay. Remember, Adityana Maham Vishnu. Okay, what is the expression? The solar year began or begins with the day of Vasanta Sampat in the Indian tradition, in the Hindu calendrical tradition, at least what we know today. And we have many references to it. Again, Rupa Bhattiji has done amazing work in this area through all the Samhitas, Brahmana Grantha, and so on. Consistently, it is the Vasanta Sampat that is the beginning of a Samvatsar, at least beginning of a solar year. And what is that beginning of the year? Again, I would encourage people who are on the Twitter to follow Bharat Dinadarshika Delhi at Date Panchang. The first month, the first solar month of the year is the month of Madhava, which is the second month of Vasanta season that is given here. Okay. Now notice, at the time of Mahabharata war, 5561 BC, so therefore Mahabharata times, notice where is the position of the sun when the solar year begins. It is near Punarvasu. That is, that sun was in the nakshatra Punarvasu, and therefore Adityana Maham Vishnu. Vishnu as a son of Aditi. And the position of Punarvasu nakshatra, why is that important? The nakshatra devata of Punarvasu is Aditi. Okay, now this is connecting the dots. Now, for some people, or actually for a good number of people, even so-called researchers, they may find, okay, how can I do that? What's the basis? Well, you have not even joined elementary school. Okay, so I will not waste my time. But somebody, those of you who are curious, you have to not just to start here, maybe even start with the basics of Ptolemy and Copernicus and Tycho Brahe and Kepler and Galileo and Newton and Maxwell and Lagrange and Einstein, Faraday, how they connected the dots, okay, and how our beautiful modern science came into being in the last 500 plus years. Maybe you want to start there before you get into very deeper subjects such as these. Okay. All right. So that's that Adityana Maham Vishnu. Why? Because at the time of Mahabharata war, the first month of the solar year, Samvatsara, the first Aditya, Vishnu in the sense of son of Aditi, and it was at the Punarvasu Nakshatra, the position of the sun, whose Nakshatra Devata is Aditi. Okay, let's move on. And of course, Vasanta Sampat was near Nakshatra Mrugashirsha Ardra, that this area here, Mrugashirsha Ardra. And so the first part of the Vasanta Rutu, okay, is into that sun was near Mrugashirsha Ardra. And when it went into the second part of Vasanta Rutu, which is when the solar year begins in the Hindu calendrical tradition, it was near Punarvasu. But the Vasanta Sampat is very critical in the Indian context, actually the world context, by the way, and therefore its nakshatra also attain a status of importance. Okay, so that is that nakshatrana maham shashi, but not in the sense of among the nakshatras I am the moon, but no, among the nakshatras I am that nakshatra whose nakshatra devata is shashi in the sense of a moon. Okay, or actually in the sense of that nakshatra which also has shasha, okay, which is that lepus, which is that rabbit, which is we saw as a Mrugashirsha nakshatra. Okay, and now on the lunar side, what I want to show you is that Margashirsha was indeed the first month of the year, Masana Margashirshayam, but keep this in mind. At the time of Mahabharata war, the position of Margashirsha lunar month is fixed by 300 plus specific evidence of the astronomy evidence of the Mahabharata text. It has to be, it must be at the first part of Sharad season, beginning of Sharad season. And Mahabharata, you'll see many expressions, of course, outside Mahabharata too. But Jivet Sharada Shatam, Sukhinam Sharada Shatam, and many expressions of that nature. Sharada is used as in a synonymous sense with the year, with the Samvatsar. Just like we will say hundreds, what is that? Sau Sal Jio, Sal, that we will use in the sense of a year, or Varsha, Marathi Varsha, like Shambar Varsha. Shambar Varsha, like giving Ashirwad, like, live for 100 years. Shambar Varsha. Varsha, because the reference to the year beginning with the rainy season. Okay. Similarly, here, Jivet Sharad Shatam, the year beginning with the Sharad season. Masana Margashirshoyam. And that's where the year began. And Margashirsha was at the beginning of Sharad season. And that's what I'm showing here, right here. This is beginning of a Sharad season, sun's position at the first part of Sharad. And if you look at the full moon position, it is near Margashirsha. It is near Mrugashirsha Nakshatra, therefore the month of Margashirsha. And that's why Krishna is saying Masanam Margashirshoyam. Also, Mahabharata is filled with this expression, Jivet Sharadashatam, Sukhinam Sharadashatam, and so on. And quickly, the second point and the last point, Margashirsha coincided with the beginning of Sharad season. I already said that, but its next connection with Rutunam Kusumakara. Sharad season is the Rutu of flowers. As much as the Vasanta Rutu is season of flowers, or even more so, depending on the specific location, by the way. Okay. All right. So that's now how you can see the 4 specific vibhutis that are mentioned: the Rutu, the month, the nakshatra, and the solar month, the lunar month, solar month, and the nakshatra and a season. Astronomy is time. These all 4 things are directly connected with astronomy. And through this recurring phenomenon, Nitya phenomenon, the nimittas are created by Bhagwan Vyasadeva to timestamp the timing of Mahabharata. All right? Okay. Now, confusion is obvious, guys. Confusion due to lack of astronomy knowledge. And you can see nutty and naughty Mahabharata dating researchers, okay, creating a chaos, okay, a colossal confusion, I would say. I'm just going to give you one demonstrative one and we will stop. For example, take this verse, Masanam Margashirshoyam Rutunam Kusumakara. Just to respect their dignity, I would say, I will not take the names of these famous Mahabharata dating researchers, okay, with all the degrees, all the accolades, a lot of publications to their names, papers published in peer-reviewed journals and whatnot, okay, with many medals, and some of them justifiably so, okay. That's not to discount the good work they have done in other areas, but here they have created colossal confusion, okay, and has led to atrociously foolish conclusions. I would just want to give you one example of that without mentioning any specific researcher. If required, I will mention it, but again, take this as a homework for yourself to look at their research papers, look at their books, look at their talks, which are available in YouTube and other mediums, and find out for yourself. Okay. I'll just give you one example, but I have seen this coming from multiple Mahabharata researchers. These are not from ordinary folks, guys. These are coming from so-called serious Mahabharata dating researchers. For example, one individual, a well-decorated individual, I mind you, had done this fight with me many years ago. Okay, Kusumakar means only Vasanta season. Okay, well, guys, go to the bottom of that word, kusuma, flower. Okay, the one that creates flowers. Okay, enables flowers. So any season that enables flowers, and even you want to select predominantly, well, why On what basis someone would make such a foolish argument that it means only Vasanta season? Now, are we disagreeing that Vasanta season is not Kusumakar? Not at all. Vasanta season is indeed. In fact, if you say Kusumakara, the first season that comes to mind is Vasanta season. No doubt about that. So the only objection I'm saying is only if someone dogmatically, adamantly insists that Kusumakar only means Vasanta season. But this is not a problem of our contemporary times. Okay. Lokmanya Tilak refers to that problem 125 years ago. We will deal with that some other time. Okay, but let's move on. So based on this particular Mahabharata dating researchers, but I know many have argued the same with me. And do you know why multiple people have argued with me? Because none of them were successful in arriving at the precise and accurate date of 5561 BCE as a specific year for Mahabharata war and as a broad area of 6th millennium BCE as the timing of the Mahabharata times. So therefore, because they're so attached to their faulty claims, Tatrairasham, Raga, Dvesha, Moha, Arthantara, Bhavat, in this fashion, Raga, because that emotionally they are perturbed, emotionally they are disturbed because their claim has been falsified. That is understandable. Dvesha, but why be envious or why detest someone who has done a precise and accurate work? We should all be joyous that we have finally found the right date. And moha, the ignorance. Instead of learning about astronomy, instead of learning about additional references from not only Mahabharata, but from additional ancient Indian text to make sense of this, many of them have taken the path of refusing to learn this, but still create fallacies and accuse someone like myself or someone like Rupa Bhattiji. Anyways, let's move on. So based on this, so therefore I said there are many individuals, but as I write this, I have a specific individual in my mind. So that person insisted that Kusumakar means only Vasanta season. And so far, so good, I will say, maybe a benefit of doubt we can give. But then next, what he insisted is really, really foolish. He says, therefore, Margashirsha was also during Vasanta season at the time of Mahabharata war. And I said, thank you very much. Now be my guest. Why is that? Because what are the implications of this mental stubbornness and also astronomy ignorance, by the way? Mental stubbornness because only insisting that Vasanta season is the season of flowers. And what is the astronomy ignorance? And therefore, very casually, very carelessly thinking that Margashirsha was during the Vasanta season at the time of Mahabharata war. Now, some of you may know these are not astronomy experts or even Mahabharata dating researchers, but trolls with some expertise in some other areas, but foolishly thinking they also understand Mahabharata text, they also understand Mahabharata references, also understand astronomy, have done utter nonsense. Okay, and we have seen that where they insist it doesn't matter whether it's a Ramayana or Mahabharata, Chaitra is always in Vasanta. Okay, now here is another Mahabharata dating researcher saying, look, Krishna is saying Masana Margashirshoyam Rutumam Kusumakara. Rutunam Kusumakara, the Kusumakar, Rutu of Kusumakar, Kusumakar of flowers is only Vasanta. It can only be Vasanta. And Masana Margashirshoyam, guess what? Margashirsha must be during Vasanta season at the time of Mahabharata war. At least, although this is extremely foolish claim, at least this Mahabharata researcher who is praised by these trolls of mine, okay, now he's forcing them to at least make these trolls of mine understand that, look, the Vasanta season can also occur during Margashirsha and not just Chaitra. Okay, so guys, if you think there is no humor in a serious research like a Mahabharata dating research, think again. All right. What are the implications of this mental stubbornness and astronomy ignorance? Well, here it is. Okay, we can easily do this. I'm not going to show you the diagram. Again, take this as a exercise homework, or you can go back to the previous diagram that I showed uh, for different nakshatras and the position of the sun, position of the moon, and the cardinal points, and you can do your own calculations. The last time, guys, the lunar month, so since Mahabharata happened in the past, let's agree on that, because there are these trolls of mine who think Mahabharata and Ramayana is happening in our times, or it may happen in future. I'm not kidding. Now, they don't say this in language because they don't even understand, the basic, they don't know how to connect the dots. But I'm connecting it for them, just verbalizing what they are foolishly claiming. Okay, so they're saying Mahabharata, Ramayana is happening in our times or happening in future. But if we ignore such individuals, just going back to this Mahabharata dating researcher, if we have to accept his claim, then this is the implication of it. If we have to agree that Margashirsha occurred during the Vasanta season at the time of Mahabharata war, then guess what? The last time lunar month of Margashirsha coincided with the peak of Vasanta season was during 16,000 BCE, and I'm saying plus minus 2,000 years. Watch my other videos to understand why plus minus 2,000 years or plus minus 2,500 years. So 16,000 BCE is what? 18,000 years ago, 18 to 20,000 years ago, because of plus minus 2,000. So this Mahabharata dating researcher, I'm kid you not, again, he doesn't realize that this is the implication. Now just imagine how bigger problem is that. But the person is essentially saying Mahabharata war happened about 18,000 years ago. Guess what? And his own date falls within the, just I will say safely, last 5,000 years. So this is the kind of challenge and problems we have in this space of Indic dating research, Indic Mahabharata dating research, or Ramayana dating research. So the last bullet there, the naive Mahabharata researchers now run away. So when I brought this to the attention of these specific Mahabharata researchers, or when I've done this with other Mahabharata researchers, then they simply stop responding, or they digress. They go on to some other subject, any other 300 plus references that I have discussed. They generate fallacies or jump into some irrelevant digressions, which is very unfortunate, very sad. Okay, sorry. So those of you who are watching this, and if you want to understand, okay, from a first principle, starting with the basic framework of Nyaya Darshana, Avayava, or basic framework of modern science, okay, the foundations, how we begin with the problem, then how we propose a theory, how the theory needs to be universal and generic, how that defines what kind of evidence must be taken into account, how we want to ensure that the evidence becomes empirically testable, and how we logically draw right inferences. If you want to see all this fun, then definitely invest your time into these 4 books, 3 books of mine. When did the Mahabharata war happen? The historic Ram, also known as 12,209 BC, and Bhishma Nirvan, and also Yuganta by Jivan Rao. They are published by Subbu Publications, available in India, definitely a great deal there, also available around the world. You can also get these all 4 books from Amazon, anywhere around the world. And some of these have been translated, for example, in Kannada, in Hindi, in Marathi. And if it's not here, it's not been translated. All right, so that's where I want to stop. Now, the confusion that I mentioned, for example, Dr. Pantaji mentioned, again, that's not unusual, as I said, or even the confusion of this Mahabharata dating researcher insisting that Masana Margashirshoyam Rutunam Kusumakara means must be only Vasanta Rutu, and Margashirsha month coincided with the Vasanta Rutu at the time of Mahabharata war, there is room for additional confusion. And you can see this not just in our times, guys. Actually, there is a indirect evidence to believe that this had possibly occurred in the immediate post-Mahabharata times. And so Vyasadeva or his disciples, or maybe the other great sages who would have updated Bhagavad Puran, they tried to take note of this confusion and try to fix that confusion. And from that comes the very interesting insight, or insights rather, and that will be my another talk another time, which is I'm just giving you the title. Did lunar and solar year begin with Sharad season during Mahabharata times? Okay, so I want to leave you on this title for my future talk, not necessarily the next talk, okay, as a food for thought, okay, for something for you to think. Did lunar and solar year begin with Sharad season during Mahabharata times? And directional answer I want to give you, a plausible answer, but with enormous evidence in support of it, is that the answer appears to be yes. Thank you all for watching this episode. Please write your comments. Please stick to the subject that is being discussed when you write your comments related to this episode. And I will see you shortly in another episode very soon. Namaskar.